Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Lauren Izo, and coming up in this edition, fourth time's a charm. Morocco becomes the latest Arab country to join the Abraham Accords. What's in your search history? Google reveals what Israelis looked for most in 2020. And Israel's prize basketball player is sending some love to his Hebrew-speaking fans. The light of peace on this Hanukkah day has never shone brighter than today in the Middle East. Those were the words of the Israeli Prime Minister on Thursday after it was announced that Morocco would be the fourth Arab country to join the Abraham Accords, and on the first night of the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah. Nittany Manson with the details.
Another historic deal makes Morocco the fourth country to join the Abraham Accords and agree to full normalization with Israel after the UAE, Bahrain, and Sudan.
I've always believed that this historic day would come. I've always worked for it. I want to first thank President Trump for his extraordinary efforts to expand peace, to bring peace to Israel and the peoples of the Middle East.
While Israelis are permitted to enter the country, the new deal is expected to also include the opening of diplomatic offices and direct flights. Brokered by President Trump, in exchange, the U.S. agreed to recognize Morocco's sovereignty over the Western Sahara.
President Trump, the people of Israel and the state of Israel will be forever indebted to you for your magnificent efforts on our behalf. I want to thank, too, the King of Morocco, King Mohammed VI, for taking this historic decision to bring a historic peace between us.
Israelis welcomed the normalization of diplomatic ties, saying they hoped it would lead to calm at home.
So the new diplomatic relation with Morocco is something that is really good for both of the countries. I hope it's just going to be the beginning of more diplomatic achievements between Israel and other Middle Eastern countries, and also North African, of course. And hopefully the Palestinians will also be the next one.
While most of Morocco's Jewish population emigrated to Israel after the Independence War of 1948, there remains a small Jewish community who are welcoming the deal with open hearts.
ما يمكنلكش تصور الفرحة اللي أنا حسيت بها كالمغاربة كلهم، واللي بغيت نقول وهو في إسرائيل كاين 1 مليون ديال اليهود مغاربة اللي هما هاجروا لتما، وواحد لابارتي منهم دائما كانت كتمشي وتجي. هاد لا نورماليزاسيون غادي تسهل الامور وغادي تشجع كاع اليهود اللي كاينين تما، وغادي ان شاء الله يجيبوا ولادهم وولاد ولادهم، وغادي تشجع كاع اليهود ديال العالم اللي غادي يجيو، حيت التاريخ ديال المغرب والتاريخ بين اليهود والمسلمين هو معروف في العالم. زعما ما كاينش يهودي في العالم اللي ما كيعرفش زعما ليستوار كي توجور ليي لي جويف et les musulmans au Maroc.
Meanwhile, the country's most prominent Islamist group has denounced the move, saying, quote, "All attempts at normalization and the Zionist infiltration are deplorable." The Palestinian Authority has remained silent thus far, even after the King of Morocco called President Mahmoud Abbas to stress his commitment to the Palestinian cause despite the agreement. Nittany Manson, ILTV.
It was a busy weekend for Netanyahu. Another normalization deal announced on Saturday, this time with the Asian, mostly Buddhist kingdom of Bhutan. According to the Foreign Ministry of Israel, the agreement follows several years of secret contact between the countries, but is completely separate from the Abraham Accords brokered by the United States. The countries agreed to formulate a joint work plan in water management, agriculture, and healthcare during a signing ceremony in India over the weekend. Israeli Foreign Minister Gabi Ashkenazi said Israel's circle of recognition is growing and expanding. The establishment of relations between us and the Kingdom of Bhutan will serve as another milestone in deepening Israel's ties in Asia. Dr. Joshua Krasna is a Middle East expert from the Moshe Dayan Center at Tel Aviv University, and he joins us now to break down these peace deals. Hi, Doctor. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to start with Morocco. First of all, how different is Morocco from the other countries in the Abraham Accords?
It's similar in a lot of ways and a little different in other ways. So Morocco is certainly part of the group with Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Egypt, which are considered as a camp that's functioning in the Arab world since already 2013, since the Egyptian counter-revolution and even before, and is very much a partner of those countries. But it is a little bit different. It doesn't have the same policy towards the Yemeni crisis, doesn't have the same policy towards Qatar, and it is, in fact, on the other side of the Middle East from those countries, and is less involved in some of the more crucial, it's less involved and less central in some of the more crucial issues of the Middle East. It did have problems with Iran 2 years ago and broke its diplomatic relations with Iran in May 2018. But since then is not really very heavily engaged on the Iranian issue, which is the main issue, I think, that brought the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain closer to Israel.
Obviously, it's a little bit of an awkward time in terms of U.S. politics. So what is the time frame for Morocco to actually sign the deal? Is it going to be before or after Biden takes office?
So I don't think that for Morocco it's an awkward time at all. I think for Morocco it's a great time. In fact, one of the interesting things when we're looking at this deal is how still open a lot of the things are. When you talk about signing an agreement, so signing an agreement on what? Right now, they're only discussing reopening the liaison offices that they had in the past and beginning discussions on the opening of embassies in the future. But there doesn't seem to be certainly hasn't been published any timeline on that, and it seems that the Moroccan side, at least, is sort of playing down the immediate rush to open embassies, for instance.
Right. So, what exactly is the significance of this deal happening now, even though there was, obviously a certain level of relations before they announced it?
Yes. So, there's actually quite good relations between Israel and Morocco for many years. In the 1960s, began good intelligence and security cooperation, which has lasted throughout the years. There are 50,000 Israeli tourists who travel here every year, not by direct flights, but usually through France. And the two countries really have very few issues that they disagree strongly on. There are reports that Israel sold some UAVs, some drones in the past few years to Morocco. From the point of view of Morocco, the timing, of course, now is great because the Trump administration gave them something that they've been hoping to get from American administrations. And in fact, the United States is the only major country in the world that's recognized the Moroccan claim to Western Sahara. So that's a very important thing that they got there. And there's also now talk about $3 billion in deals, that the United States government is going to be guaranteeing from the International Development Finance Cooperation, and apparently talks about a deal of $1 billion worth of American military drones that are going to be sold to Morocco, or at the deal to sell them to Morocco will be presented to Congress in the next few days.
Sir, we had another surprising announcement of a normalization deal over the weekend. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So not too much, because I'm an expert on the Middle East, and the Bhutan deal is sort of, it's being packaged in the same package.
Sure.
Because for various political reasons, certainly political reasons in Israel, I think they want to show that there's this sort of incredible wave of normalizations. And it's true. I mean, over the past few years, there's been a lot of normalizations in Africa, a lot of renewal of diplomatic relations in Africa. But of course, Bhutan is not at all in the same group as the other countries in terms of it's not a Muslim country. It's not a country that's ever been, that's ever had poor relations with Israel. It's not a country which affects the strategic balance in the Middle East at all, unlike almost all of the other countries that are being discussed here. So it comes at the same time. So therefore, politically, it's very useful for the current government in Israel.
Right, but this is not actually considered. It's not actually considered a part of the Abraham Accords, correct?
Oh, it has nothing to do with the Abraham Accords except for timing.
Okay, thank you for all this clarification, Dr. Krasna. We really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Okay, you too.
Believe it or not, there was an upside to 2020. This year has seen the fewest Israelis die as a result of a security-related incident like terrorism or combat. According to the Israel Defense Forces figures, 2 Israelis, 1 civilian, and 1 soldier have been killed this year. Back in 2019, a year which had previously seen the lowest number of security-related deaths, Israel had 9 deaths. 2 soldiers and 7 civilians, and 16 people were killed the year before that. IDF Chief of Staff Aviv Kochavi spoke about the statistics during an end-of-the-year briefing, saying, "We, the IDF, thwarted every attempt to infiltrate into Israel and a drop in the number of rockets fired from Gaza." Israel may be attempting to negotiate with Hamas, the rulers of the Gaza Strip. According to Ynet, the Israeli government is proposing to the terror organization to assist with COVID-related issues in exchange for the release of Israelis currently being held captive in the Strip, where there has been a surge of cases and deaths in recent days. Palestinian sources say Israel's offer was transmitted through Egypt, who last week offered to be a new broker for peace. While in the past Hamas has had interest in two-way prisoner swaps, Israel now believes they are moderating their demands because of the dire health situation. Gaza has now registered nearly 25,600 COVID-19 infections, including around 150 deaths. They entered a lockdown just last week. Well, we're getting closer and closer to vaccination against COVID-19. That's what the Prime Minister announced this morning as he promised Israelis could begin getting the Pfizer shot even as early as next week. Hannah Rifkin with the latest.
Israel's health ministry was planning to begin distributing vaccinations against the coronavirus on December 27th. Now it looks like that will happen as early as next week, on December 20th.
והיכולת של הקופות בארץ לבצע את המשימה אומרת לנו שאנחנו כנראה נוכל להקדים את מתן החיסונים לאוכלוסיית ישראל בצורה המיטבית, לדעתי הטובה ביותר בעולם.
The United States giving the final go-ahead on Friday to the nation's first COVID-19 vaccine, made by Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, marking what could be the beginning of the end of the outbreak. Israel received more than 100,000 doses just last week.
I have really good news. Today, our nation has achieved a medical miracle. We have delivered a safe and effective vaccine in just 9 months. This is one of the greatest scientific accomplishments in history. It will save millions of lives and soon end the pandemic once and for all. I am thrilled to report that the FDA has authorized the Pfizer vaccine.
The Health Ministry's Director General, Chazi Levy, signaled on Saturday that Israel could approve the shot in the coming days. Also, Likud lawmaker David Bhutan has been hospitalized over his low oxygen levels, days after it was revealed that he contracted the coronavirus. Bhutan, who is 60 years old, was taken for treatment at the Sheba Medical Center in Ramat Gan on Saturday evening. According to Hebrew language media, he is in intensive care. Meanwhile, cases in Israel continue to rise. On Saturday, the health ministry recorded 1,289 new cases. There are 120 COVID patients in serious condition, and the death toll stands at 2,990.
זה ממש לא מוגבל רק למגזר הערבי או למגזר אחר. אנחנו רואים את זה במגזר הכללי, בערים הגדולות. אני לא בטוח שיש לזה קשר נסיבתי כמו שציינת. אני חושב שפשוט זו תקופה שיש עלייה בתחלואה בכלל המגזרים.
Speaking on Saturday evening, Ash urged Israelis to vaccinate at their earliest opportunity, adding that a significant number of additional doses would arrive before the end of the month. Chana Rifkin, ILTV.
Well, on top of the normalization agreements announced over the weekend, Israel is signing yet another deal this week, a free trade agreement with South Korea. Let's find out more about it from economy expert Dr. Vili Abraham. Thank you so much for joining us, Vili.
Pleasure.
So why does South Korea want a free trade agreement now? How long has it been in the works, and is this a surprise?
Well, it's not really a surprise. It's been ongoing for about a decade. And the reason that it's been taken so long is because South Korea was concerned over a possible outcry coming from the Arab world. But since we have signed an agreement with UAE in September, then they've basically gotten the green light to proceed with this.
And what are both Israel and South Korea's interests in having this type of agreement at this time?
Well, the new president in South Korea is implementing a so-called employment-based economy. He wishes to support small and medium businesses. And also, he understands that in order to boost the economy, he needs the technology that Israel can offer. For example, if we look at medical devices, intelligent production systems, smart homes, renewable energy, vehicle automation technologies, all of the things that Israel is actually in the forefront of, and we can provide. They have an aging population which needs the medical devices that we can offer, the technology, for example.
So there's a lot of sort of technology involved in this deal. And as far as I understand, one of the most exciting parts of the deal is that it could really bring down the price of cars in Israel, right? How does that work?
Well, yeah, we're talking about probably a decrease of about 7% in prices if we look at cars like Hyundai and Kia. But not only cars, we're also talking about electronic devices, Samsung products and LG products, which have a large array of products, whether TV sets and refrigerators and washing machines. So Israelis could benefit. However, we're not sure, we cannot be certain that importers will pass on the savings to consumers. So hopefully they will do it and not pocket the differences.
Sure, of course. I'm curious, what are the sort of the products that Israelis are most excited for, and what are the products that the South Koreans are most excited for from Israel?
Yeah, so if we look at Israelis, for example, 1 in every 3 cars that you see on the road is of South Korean origin. Electronic devices, we buy a lot of electronic devices. One of the hot products are TV sets, for example, and washing machines. And if you look at the Koreans, well, what we can offer is really technologies and not really products that the regular consumer can buy, unless you're talking about certain fruits and vegetables and orange, etc. But basically, it's products that the industry can benefit from, and not the average South Korean.
Can you be a little bit more specific about the Israeli technologies that they're interested in?
Yeah, so we're talking about medical devices that we can offer. We're talking about intelligent production systems, technologies that are related to smart home systems. Everything that has to do with renewable energy, it's something that Israel is at the forefront of. And as I said, the production of automation technologies, vehicle automation technologies, they're producers of vehicles, and we are at the forefront of developing technologies related to automation. And this is something they can greatly benefit from. So it means that our technologies, which are related to automation, for example, will be installed in Korean cars in the future.
Okay, it looks like a really great partnership on the way. Dr. Abraham, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you.
What a year this has been. COVID-19, the world under lockdown, peace in the Middle East. 2020 has been engulfed by huge headlines. And it's no secret that every country's character is defined by what they Google. The company released its data for this year, revealing what exactly Israelis looked for on the internet over the past 12 months. Let's find out what that is from James Spiro, reporter at CTech. Hey, James, what's up?
Hi, how's it going?
Great. So I'm very curious. I know what I Googled in 2020, but what are the most sort of popular themes that Israelis are Googling this year?
So thank you, Lauren. First of all, this is one of my favorite times of year. At the end of the year, when things come up like Spotify, Google, it's these kind of year in reviews.
We get to find out exactly how crazy our year has been.
Exactly, yeah, for sure. And so obviously 2020 has been a crazy year in terms of obviously the coronavirus. There's no surprise, Israelis are the number one term for Israelis, how do you get infected with corona? Other such corona facts like on questions such as how do you make a homemade mask? Then interestingly, on the flip side of that, it's almost immediately partnered with the holiday aspect that maybe a lot of Israelis missed out on during lockdown. So how do you make mufleta? How do you make pancakes?
Of course, because everybody's stuck in their homes in lockdown during Corona, so they don't have their mothers to tell them how to make their favorite recipes.
Exactly. So they're going from Google to YouTube on these how-to videos. So I thought that was interesting. On the politics side, of course, it was an American election year. There was an Israeli election year.
Yeah, it was a really politically charged year in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you can definitely see that in the political queries. Now, interestingly, the top query in politics is election results 2020.
Okay, now is that referring to Israel elections or U.S. elections?
So 2020 had elections in Israel and America, so it's not immediately clear. But if you look at the subsequent queries, it's US elections, US election results, and also Donald Trump. I'll get back to UAE in a second.
All right.
But if we follow this kind of election trend, it seems like Israelis are more interested in the American election.
So the Israeli elections, like specifically, were not on this list?
No, at least not in the top 5.
Interesting. Okay, and what other trends are we seeing in 2020? I know there was a lot of people searching for information about reality TV, looking for things to do while they're stuck at home.
So that's another thing. Of course, come kind of March, April time, everyone was stuck at home, and it seems like a kind of Israeli favorite that they were watching shows like Survivor, they were watching Big Brother, they were watching The Amazing Race. These shows were all big in Israel before in 2019. Obviously, they've peaked up this year. As more people are at home.
And obviously, you know, the year before, 2019, we had not heard of the coronavirus. I'm sure the things that Israelis were searching were quite different. We don't have the statistics in front of us, but how do you think they might have changed from the year before?
Yeah, it's so funny because 2019 is practically a different world now. You know, the trends that people were searching in 2019 were probably a bit more conventional, maybe not so many recipes, probably people are cooking more at home now, people are probably watching more. So I reckon a lot of the queries were kind of less corona, less how to do things, and more knowledge-based.
It's hard for me even to remember any trends of 2019, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, you and me both.
Yeah, all right. James Spyro, thank you so much, as always.
Thank you.
This next story is for all you Israeli basketball fans, including my boss, Tom. The Washington Wizards NBA team has launched an official Hebrew Twitter page following their drafting of Israeli player Deni Avdia last month. The account's description says it will have an Israeli focus and has already posted a video welcoming Israeli fans to the page. Take a look.
שלום לכל האוהדים הישראלים של וושינגטון וויזארדס. אני רוצה לברך אתכם, ברוכים הבאים לעמוד הטוויטר הרשמי של וושינגטון בעברית. מקווה שתהנו, כל התוכן פה בעברית, רק בשבילכם, אוהב אתכם המון מוושינגטון. נשיקות.
He also took part in the official candle lighting ceremony of the Israeli embassy in the United States. He was asked to take the honor of lighting the first candle.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו להדליק נר של חנוכה. Amen.
And the United States Embassy also invited another special guest for the third candle, which took place on Saturday night, the UAE's ambassador to Washington. Take a look.
This year, I'm lighting the Hanukkah candles with you at the same time the Jewish community in the UAE are lighting their Hanukkah candles. Now that is peace. Next year, let us hope we can celebrate this holiday together in person.
This year's Hanukkah is especially different for the Jews of Dubai, as it comes just months after the normalization deal between the UAE and Israel.
Right now, live on, the whole world is talking about Morocco and Israel, but no one forgets that the UAE was the leader. UAE started this whole peace process, and everything started here in this great place.
Of course, a big happy Hanukkah to all the Jews celebrating all around the world. Now it's time to take a look at the weather forecast. Temperatures will remain relatively moderate. Tonight we can expect partly cloudy skies with some rain and lows of 63 degrees Fahrenheit or 17 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow will bring a high of 73 degrees Fahrenheit or 23 degrees Celsius. And now, just before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel. You are listening to Jingle Bells in Arabic in the old city of Jerusalem, just beside Damascus Gate. Everyone is getting into the holiday spirit. How exciting. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.25 shekels to the American dollar and 2.55 shekels to the Canadian dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV pages. I'm Lauren Izzo. Happy Hanukkah, and thanks for watching.